Honorary, I like that. We have a good rapport. We don't mind insulting each other, and we're not big crybabies, so it's not going to keep us up all night.
No, yeah, I think we usually have, good enough conversations. Well, let's fucking talk about it.
Yeah.
So, when you say that you're a moral objectivist, what do you even mean?
Question, because there's the Anne Randian side, and I don't know that it means the same thing. You asked me on Twitter what I meant by it, and I'm thinking objective, like the scientific definition of objective, independent of human minds. There's a truth claim there. There is an agreed upon way to measure that truth claim. And I think a lot of the disagreement comes around from the agreed upon method to measure that truth claim with morality specifically.
So, make a moral, give me a moral proposition that you think is true.
Uh, Monogamy foster a more cohesive. Well, see, now I'm drifting into the moral system. Uh, I believe that monogamy will foster a more cohesive society than polygyny. So I think monogamy is a better system than a polygynous system,
Okay, it's a better
and I think that
system.
we can, and I think that we can empirically prove that because the monogamy system will sustain less conflict within society, and there less conflict is obviously better for society. Obviously, I realize I realize that there are subjective claims nested in here, but I mean, when you're talking about morality, we're really talking. It's a difficult conversation to begin with, but do you kind of understand what I'm getting at here?
I understand part of what you're getting at, but it's not clear to me that it's actually going to be objectivism. So, what I'm trying to find out is
Well,
firstly, just one sec. Firstly, I just want to find out
no, go ahead.
yeah, if moral propositions are truth apt on your view, which it seems like you think they are. You think that a proposition like it's better to,
Mhm.
or I could change the sentence probably to, we should, uh, we should live in a monogamous as opposed to a polygamous society. You think that
Totally.
a
Yes.
proposition like that is true, so you think moral propositions can have truth value. So now what I'm trying to find out is just if the truth value actually depends on the attitude of the subject that the proposition is indexed to. Because if that's the case, it's just going to be some kind of subjectivism. So when you say that it's better, like what do you mean by that? Is that are you just is it a hypothetical norm or is there something more to it than that?
Well, I'm always getting accused of utilitarianism.
Well, that's not even going to be relevant. So utilitarianism
Okay,
is
ask your question again. I'll try to answer.
okay, well, first, I'll address what you said about utilitarianism. So, utilitarianism is going to be completely irrelevant here because utilitarianism is a question of normative ethics. So, you could be an
Hmm.
objectivist and a utilitarian. You could think that there are, like, moral facts out there and you're a utilitarian, or you could be a subjectivist and a utilitarian. So, utilitarianism is just not going to have anything to do with this. This is like meta ethics, that's normative ethics. So, the question,
Study philosophy?
pardon me?
Did you study philosophy?
No, but I mean, I've had a lot of moral debates, so I
Okay.
somewhat know the territory. But okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to find
Stuff,
out.
man. That stuff will rot your brain, Isaac. You gotta watch out. That's like
Well, that's why I'm going and
that's like
doing
doing
some.
LSD every day.
That's why I'm doing some science in school. Though I feel like I want to do more than just philosophy. I want to get a good background in the material sciences. But yeah, so what I'm trying to find out is basically two things. Like, are moral propositions truth apt? Which the answer is clearly yes on your view. And then the second thing is, does the truth value of the moral proposition depend on the attitude of the subject it's indexed to? Because if that's the case, it's just going to be what I consider subjectivism. Um,
Guy to talk to. That's great. That is great. This is concrete. I love it.
okay, so here's the question. So when you say that we should live in a monogamous society as opposed to a polygamous society, is that just a hypothetical norm? Is that you saying that we should do this if we have some goal, or is it something other than a hypothetical norm?
Get at whether or not it's universal is
Oh, okay.
or
Do you know what the term hypothetical norm means?
I know what the word hypothetical means.
Oh,
That
okay, okay. So,
must be different. So school me,
well, okay. So
educate me.
the quick version is just that. Okay, so when we're making some kind of like moral normative statement, that's a statement basically like it's moral to do this, or you should do this, it's good to do this, and any of that kind of stuff are like normative, moral statements. So a hypothetical norm is when you're just saying that you should do this thing if you want to achieve this goal. So it's like if you want
Okay.
to get it, you can make these statements uh, in realms that people typically wouldn't think of as moral, right? So like if you want to drink, you should get a glass of water, right? That would be a hypothetical norm.
Right.
So I'm asking you if
Yeah, the answer is it's a hypothetical norm. It's completely goal based because it would be, if you want to have a society that's relatively low in conflict, then monogamy is a better system than polygamy. Polygamy is going to, I mean, polygamy, you're basically shutting a lot of males out of the mating market who are going to be sexually frustrated males. Like, they're not going to have family ties. They're not going to be binded to your society in any way, shape, or form. So you can make the argument that having a bunch of males that aren't embedded in your society is not going to be, you're going to have more conflict in that society than you are in a society that's monogamous.
okay,
Does that all makes sense, right?
I understand what you're trying to say. I don't know if all the facts there are true, but I understand that the general thing you're saying is just that a
Right.
certain outcome, like something like well-being, will be maximized if we make that decision. So,
Your goal could be for a society that's
well,
completely has no, like, the conflict could be not on your radar at all. So therefore it is goal dependent.
yeah, so if someone, for example, just doesn't have a goal like maximizing well being or societal cohesion or something like that, is that moral proposition true for them?
It wouldn't be, no, obviously.
I don't see
Well,
that.
no, actually, but the moral proposition would still be true regardless of whether or not they wanted to maximize
Well, let's write the moral
societal
proposition down. Okay, so the moral proposition
societal
is.
cohesion,
Let's just write it down so we're clear. So,
right?
all right,
For
so
social cohesion.
we
Therefore,
well wait no, we don't want to include the goal in the sentence at this
okay.
point, so just one second. So we should live in a monogamous as well. I don't even need to write as opposed to. I'll just say we should live in a monogamous society. So there's a moral proposition, and I spelled
Only one wife
monogamous
for you.
right. Okay, so we should live in a monogamous society. So is that proposition true for one person and false for another person? Like on my view, it breaks down into
It
indexed propositions. Once, yeah. But sorry, what was your answer there?
is upon the person. Obviously, if you're a high status male, you're going to want to live in a polygynous society because you're going to get the majority of females, and that's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your reproductive advantage.
Well,
So there is a tension.
setting aside an analysis of like who would want this, who would agree with this proposition and whatnot. Like we could that's all going to get into descriptive stuff about like what kind of people would want what kind of society. I'm just asking you, is the proposition true for some people and then false for other people? Because if the answer to that is yes, I just don't see how you're an objectivist.
I guess it would. I think it would be honest. I mean, it would break down. It would be true for some people and not true for others, obviously, because there are people that want to live in a polygynous society.
Okay, so I don't think you're an objectivist, so I don't think we disagree.
So, are you not? Are you an objectivist or?
No, I mean I know that for some weird
Okay.
reason you got in your head at one point that I'm an objectivist, but no, I'm a pretty staunch non-realist, pretty staunch
Okay.
subjectivist. Yeah.
So let me explain. Maybe you can help me better articulate this because what objective means in scientific terms, correct?
Pardon me.
You understand what objective means in scientific terms. Independent of human
Yeah,
minds,
it
agreed
usually.
upon measurement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, if you and I want to talk about which painting is best, we'll never, there's not, that's a subjective thing because there's not an agreed upon measurement for the beauty of a painting.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's an agreed upon
But if,
measurement for what we should do with society either.
that is true, that there
And
isn't.
even if there was, I wouldn't consider it objectivism in any like meaningful sense. Like it would just be some form of universalism. If it's just like all the subjects universally want the same thing, then sure they'd all agree with the
Mhm.
norm. But it's not actually objective because a subject could just not want it, and it would be false for the proposition would be false for that subject. So it wouldn't even matter if in practice everyone actually agreed with it. The question is just if someone comes along who disagrees with who doesn't want that kind of society, is that moral proposition still true for them? So an objectivist is going to say yes, and a subjectivist is going to say no. And you're saying no, which means you're a subjectivist.
Start combining people in certain ways, and you consistently get the same types of outcomes from various moral systems.
Can I just help you out? Because I can see exactly what the error is that's going on here. I think that
Okay,
you'll
yeah,
probably
definitely.
agree when I say this. So part of what you're saying is objective, but it doesn't make you a moral objectivist. What you're saying is that there's objective facts about things like what will maximize well-being, right? It's an
Mhm.
objective fact that if I were to just fucking punch you in the head right now, your well-being would go down, right? Like that's
Mhm.
an objective
Probably not when
fact.
you did though. You're like,
Yeah,
that would just
yeah,
like
with my
graze off of me. I
noodly
probably
little
just.
vegan arm. Yeah, it would probably deflect and hit me, and I'd probably end up in the hospital.
Oh,
Okay.
I know. I feel bad for you, man. Don't do that.
Okay, so if someone strong came and punched you in the face, right? It's probably gonna
Yeah.
we can say it's objectively true. Again, like okay, so one little tiny
Yes.
thing. Of course, someone can undermine is anything objective? Can you prove solipsism is false? But we're assuming that there's an external
We're not going to
world
go
and
there. Yeah,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
Yes.
we're starting
Okay.
we're assuming that there's an external world and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to say, yeah, it's an objective fact that Adam's well-being would go down if Hulk Hogan just punched him in the head right now, right? So
You probably
that's
kill me.
right. But that's the part that's the objective fact, right? Whether he should or shouldn't, you think that a proposition like that is going to just depend on the person's attitude. Someone who hates you might think the proposition Hulk should punch you is true. Someone who doesn't hate you might think it's
Right.
false, right? And it might actually be true and false for them. Technically, I think it'll actually break down into index propositions, but we don't. So it doesn't mean that there's contradictions on subjectivism. But we don't even need to go there. The main point is the thing that you're saying objective is facts about what will maximize well-being. You're not saying the
Right.
thing that's objective is what we should do, right? You're saying that's goal dependent. It could be that
Right.
we know all the facts about what maximizes well-being, and there's someone who doesn't have a goal of maximizing well-being, so for them it's not true that we should act in line with those facts, right?
Right.
So yeah, I
Gotcha.
understand what you're saying is objective. So for example, there's this idea. So let me put it this way. If we were all to have the same goal, right, we could have a nice objective conversation about what would achieve that goal, and we could employ all the methods of science to help us determine what would best achieve that goal. That's the kind of view you're taking?
Um, Repeat.
So the part about the goal is the subjective part. Like, do we want to maximize well-being or not? Maybe someone does, maybe some other person doesn't. The thing that's objective is once we all agree on a goal, then we can employ all the tools of science and
Yeah,
economics
yeah,
and
yeah.
physics and everything there, all the objective sciences, to determine what will best bring about that goal. So there's an objective fact about how to achieve the
Exactly.
goal, but the
Yeah.
fact that the goal should be achieved is subjective.
Right.
Yeah, you're a subjectivist.
Agreement. Hey, is animal behavior subjective?
I don't know how you mean that exactly. But like
Well,
they
animals.
objectively exhibit behavior. They objectively behave in certain ways.
Right, but that behavior of animals, we think of them as kind of almost robotic, like they take in stimulus and react in a specific way,
Humans don't do
generally
that.
all the time. No, humans do that too. That's why I'm questioning, like,
Yeah. Well, what do you believe in free will?
believe in free will. Yes, yeah, I definitely do.
Oh God. Okay. Well, we can talk about that, but
Yeah,
like, I mean,
free
I
will, right? I mean,
let's just close off the moral topic though, because I think we're
yeah,
actually
I
I
don't want to
think
talk. I hate talking about free will. I honestly do. So,
oh no, no, oh, I'm fine talking about free will. I think we actually agree on the moral thing though. So we can agree that there's objective.
Yeah.
So let's just test these two things. We can agree that there's objective facts about what will maximize well-being, right?
Yes.
Okay, but we can also agree that whether it's true that you should maximize. What is that
I don't know. Did my sound go up?
noise? Oh, it just went insane for a second. Holy shit. Okay, so then the second thing is, can we agree that whether it's true that you should maximize well-being is going to depend on the attitude of the subject? Maybe for Adam, it's true that you should maximize well-being, and for Isaac, it's not true that you should maximize well-being.
Right. Yes. So
Okay,
that is
yeah. Yeah, we don't disagree.
that's
I agree
the
with all of that.
that's a subjective, but I don't necessarily know that that is subjective. That's why I think that's why I
well-
went to the animal situation.
Well, wait a second. You're not sure if it's... So by subjective, all we mean is like the truth value of that proposition. We should live in a monogamous society. It's just going to depend on... So here, I'll tell you how I think this works, okay? I think that I can't make sense of just that proposition alone right there. We should live in a monogamous society. I think that what you have to do to make sense of that is go like this. Give me 1 sec to type. So I think you actually have to do that to even make sense of the proposition. I can't analyze a proposition like we should live in a monogamous society in any kind of technical way without knowing who it's indexed to. So I think that that proposition is actually going to break down into these kind of indexed propositions. Like for Isaac, we shouldn't live in a monogamous society, or for Adam, we should live in a monogamous society. And I think those kind of indexed propositions can be true, right? But I think that whether we'd say that big proposition is true, I think if we're technical about it, if we're disagreeing, we're actually talking about different propositions, right? So I don't think there's an argument about subjectivism entailing contradictions if the same proposition can be true or false. So a subjectivist is going to want to say that, you know, if that can be true for one person and false for another, it actually breaks down into slightly different propositions that are indexed. So I think that right. So would you agree that that proposition, we can't really make sense of it alone. We have to know who the agent is and what their goals are. And then once we know that, we can break it down into an index proposition and see whether it's true or not.
It makes sense, and just for those listening, he's written out, for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society, for Adam we should live in a monogamous society. It doesn't, and we both agree that the facts that I'm laying out, obviously you don't know the research, but the facts that I'm laying out are, in a monogamous society there'll be less conflict, and that what people generally want is a less conflict in society. But obviously there could be people that want more conflict in society. You're saying it's subjective, it's subjective whether, you know, the amount of conflict somebody wants in society is subjective.
That's close enough.
But they have their own independent goals. Like if a conflict-ridden society is going to be to their advantage, then obviously they want to live in a conflict-ridden society. If a stable society is going to be to their advantage, that's what they want. What people really want is the advantage. But I guess I'm kind of just looking at society as a whole, and I don't necessarily, like, if you look at society as a system, you kind of have to step outside of the individual frame of reference.
Adam, just think about it like this, okay? If you're an objectivist, right? If you think there's some kind of moral truth that everyone's beholden to, you're not going to say that this proposition, we should live in a monogamous society, you know, it breaks down into separate propositions, and then those separate propositions about whether we should do it or not, their truth value is just totally contingent on whether the subject wants to do that thing or not. Like, that's just going to be subjectivism, if you agree with that kind of view. Like, do you think...
Yeah, I don't agree with that kind of view.
Wait, okay, so you think that for me... So I'm going to play the role of someone who wants to live in a polygamous society. You think that the so here, let me just write. See, okay,
Yeah.
1 second. I'm
For
gonna put a few
we should live
dashes.
in a polygamous society.
Right. So
Screen cap. Oh,
let me
gotcha.
just write this. Do you think so? I'm telling you right now that I don't have a desire to live in a monogamous society. Do you think that that proposition that I just wrote for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society, is true, despite the fact that I don't have a goal of living in a monogamous society?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds like objectivism now. So why would that be the case?
Because it would be a better society to live in.
You're just begging the question by calling it better. So when we talk about better, we're
Well,
talking. Wait,
by
just one
better,
sec.
I mean less conflict.
Well,
By better, I mean less
okay,
conflict.
okay, yeah, right. So the problem is if you say better, right, it's going to beg the question by assuming that's like the person's goals, right? And if by better you just mean some kind of descriptive fact, if you say, okay, wait, no, I'm not saying it's better by your goals, I'm just saying that there would be less conflict, then I can just reply by saying, okay, I don't value less conflict. So I don't value less conflict. Why should that proposition be true for me right there? Why is that true for me?
I understand what you're saying, and I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent that it breaks down by the people who want
Well, I
the people who will gain advantage.
Here, let me put it this way. I can't tell if we totally agree or not, because sometimes you say things that clearly pin you as a subjectivist, then you say something that goes against it. So, like this last sentence right here. For Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society. This is a way to tell if you're an objectivist or a subjectivist.
That's true.
I'm telling you, I don't.
Do with it. That's true.
I'm telling you, I don't have a goal to live in a monogamous society. Okay. So if you still think that proposition is true for me, even though I don't have the goal, it sounds like you're an objectivist. If you think at that point that proposition becomes false for me, you're a subjectivist. So if you think it's still true, which is what you said a moment ago, I'd need some kind of argument for that. Why would that be the case?
People that believe we should live in an anarchical society, correct?
You cut out at the start of that sentence. What did you say about anarchic society?
There are people that believe we should live in an anarchical society.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
They have the belief that this anarchy would be utopia. A lot of people disagree with that. Okay.
Yep.
The truth of how society would be is objective, I would say.
Yep. No
in some sense.
Yep. No one's disagreeing with that.
Okay.
We're talking about.
So just because they want to live in an anarchical society doesn't change the truth value of an anarchical society. Would be chaos.
Well, no one's saying that, right? So they can agree with all of the descriptive claims, right? They can say, I agree with everything about Adam's analysis about whether monogamy or anarchy or whatever is going to produce chaos or cohesion. They can agree with your whole set of descriptive claims, right? We're talking about this claim, the normative claim. So let's just go back to the monogamy example. I'm telling you, I don't have a goal to live in a monogamous society or any goal that would lead to me wanting to do that, okay? So I want to know why that proposition is true for me, because I can't understand what it would mean to say that proposition is true for me.
You would I'm trying to do it without I'm trying to structure it without just blatantly falling into the better trap.
Yeah, right. Well, this is like the process of realizing why objectivism doesn't make sense. So you'll realize you'll keep begging the question if you say better. Either you'll beg the question by saying better in a way that assumes that I have a goal of maximizing the society when I don't, or you'll just say better as in some descriptive statement like, oh, it increases social cohesion, and then I can just respond by saying, I agree with that, but why does that mean I should want to live in that society? So unless you think there's some kind of way out of that, I mean, I think that you should concede that that proposition would be false for me if I don't want to live in that society.
Well, it wouldn't change this objective structure of the society.
Yeah, no one's talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about the proposition for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society. Let's say I agree with your whole descriptive analysis. I agree that monogamy will increase social cohesion. I agree everything you say, okay? All the lonely guys who now can't get guys because girls have too much sexual freedom, and in past years they would have had those girls and been happy and lived out their life, and now they can't, so they have virgin rage. Like, let's just I can agree.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I know where you're coming from. I'm just trying to avoid getting into into that discussion because it's irrelevant, right? I can agree with all of
No,
that
no,
stuff.
it's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
well, I could agree with all of that, which I don't for the record, but I could, right? I could agree with all of that,
Right.
and that still would not answer this question, right? The question is just, if I don't want to live in that monogamous society, is the proposition for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society still true? If you say yes, you're an objectivist, but I just don't know in what sense it could possibly be true for me. If you agree that no, that proposition at that point would be false, then you're a subjectivist.
I am saying yes. I'm saying it's still true.
Okay, so how the hell would it be true, Adam?
Because this it would be a more functional.
Yep, I agree with that. Why should I
society.
care about that? Yep, I agree with that. Why should I care about living
This
there?
is why this is why I was trying to pin down the animal thing, because I mean, in an evolutionary paradigm, the goals of all organisms are always geared towards survival and reproduction. So the goal is always the same. And I would like to make the argument that in human beings, the goal is the same as well.
Okay, if you want to argue that I have to have that goal somehow, you can try to do that. Now,
Yeah,
I could just,
it's
for
a
the record,
naturalistic fallacy,
for the
you were gonna
record,
say.
I could just respond to that by creating a hypothetical agent who doesn't have the goal, because I already told you, even if we grant universal subjectivism, that's not going to get you to objectivism. So even if you somehow argued that all humans have the same goals, that still wouldn't get you to objectivism. But I'm not even inclined to grant that. Okay, I don't have that goal. I don't have the goal of a monogamous society. So let's just assume that those are my drives. So well, I mean, they are. I literally don't want to live in a monogamous society. I think people should be able to do what they want, but that's just, doesn't matter why
Sure.
I think it, right? I just want to know why that proposition for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society would be true if I don't want to live in a monogamous society.
The human beings group together to form societies that compete against other societies, and I'm basically saying that there are all kinds of objective measures that we can use on those to compare those two societies. So
Sure.
yes, a polygynous society can form and a monogamous society can form, and this is the reason why we have so much data on the differences between the two societies. So
right,
so I agree with what you're saying. And I guess,
well, you don't agree. You think that that proposition is true even if I don't want to live in the society. So I want you to explain why that would be the case.
right.
Or,
yeah, no,
or just
from a
grant that if
philosophical point of view,
Oh, sorry.
if you're saying that the philosophically I am not a moral objectivist, I'm a moral subjectivist. Like, granted that.
No,
I mean,
it
by
doesn't.
those definitions I am.
Wait, but now it doesn't seem like that. You were saying things earlier that put you in the camp of being a subjectivist. But if you're saying that somehow this proposition is still true even if I don't want to live in a monogamous society, that sounds like objectivism now. So that's what I want to understand. Why the hell would that proposition be true if I don't want to live in that society?
Still, you're pushing me into the goals thing, and I would just say,
Sorry,
and
I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
one of the
Sorry,
reasons
you
why
lost me. You lost me. What did you say? I'm pushing you into what?
the goals situation, where
Sure.
you're saying that the goal is subjective, so therefore the morality is subjective, and I'm saying that the goal is always the same. That the goal is for survival and reproduction of the individual and the group, the tribe, the nation, whatever you want to call it.
I don't have that goal. I don't have that goal. So why is that proposition true for me?
Of surviving as an individual or a nation, or
just say that even if you're going to try to do some move like, oh, all humans are biologically wired like that, or something, which, I don't even accept that, but let's just say that I'm mentally broken, right? I just have a mental illness, or my mind is just built differently, right? If evolution produces a bunch of beings that can walk, there's still the occasional being that can't walk, all right? So I don't have that goal, and I want to know why it would be that the proposition is still true for me.
Because the goal is larger than you. It encompasses the entire group.
But
so
why
you're
would that
only
mean I
one.
have it? Right, but we're not talking about for the group, right? The proposition doesn't say for the group we should live in a monogamous society. It says for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society.
This is super helpful, Isaac. I'm glad you're willing to do this.
Yeah, no problem. I'm all about deprogramming objectivists, so it's fine.
Well, I'm conceptualizing morality much differently than many people do.
Okay.
So I'm conceptualizing morality as kind of the software that combines people into groups to compete against other groups for survival and resources. So you can have you can have a society that's monogamous and a society that's polygynous, and those two societies will be running different ethics packages, let's call them.
Sure.
Over time, you'll be able to see which society outcompetes the other society for survival, members, resources, all of those things.
Sure.
And those what we learn from those competitions will be objective. There'll be measurements that we can take and agree upon.
Sure.
So talking about objective morality, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this contest to develop ethics that unify groups to better compete against other groups. Now, I realize that the philosophers will come in and they'll say, well, what if a society organized itself and they just think of the most heinous things, but they develop this super organism, this super tribe that just can outcompete any other tribe doing these heinous things that all of us would think are just terrible, completely disgusting, right? My question, and this is a very tangible question, is that even really a possibility? Because we've evolved these intuitions, and it seems to me that the intuitions for things that just are repulsive behaviors are probably that we have those intuitions that they're repulsive behaviors because they facilitate some sort of software program that is not good for survival and reproduction at the level of the individual and at the level of the group. And I keep examining places like that, and it seems to be true. So you come into a situation where if it's not even really physically possible to develop this heinous ethic that will let this group outcompete other groups, then our ethics might be completely aligned with survival and reproduction. And that's why I find this interesting and talking about it. So, but I understand the philosophical challenges that you have to this. So I'm curious.
It's just one challenge.
A lot.
It's just one challenge, and the challenge is
the challenge though at the individual level. Though you're only saying because
I could do it at the group level. I just chose that example, right? So
let me give you one more example here because
okay.
But
just to mention, I won't go off, but you have to be able to produce an answer to that question, okay? Because that's what's going to determine if you're a subjectivist or an objectivist. So what you're doing right now is just kind of describing a whole bunch of things about your moral system to me. A lot of them I agree with, right? And you can keep doing that if you want, but I'm just going to keep returning to that question until I get a clear answer to it. So I'm just warning you where I'm going to go, but you can say whatever you want.
Right. Okay. So I'm also conceptualizing you have a bunch of different cells in your body, right? And all of those cells are individual cells, but they make up you as a person.
Okay.
Right? So I think of people the same way. People are individuals, but they are making up a society. They're participating in a society that you can't really separate them from. So when you're asking about questions at the cellular level, you're really having a different conversation than this when you're talking about questions at an organism level. And when you're talking about questions at the individual level, you're really talking about questions that are different from the superorganism level.
Adam, what you're saying is true, but all you're doing is playing with the index, okay? So the first bit of the sentence there, the moral proposition for Isaac, for Adam, for society, for the alien, whatever it is, that's just the index, okay? So again, whether the proposition is true just depends if it accurately captures what the subject who it's indexed to thinks. At least that's my view as a subjectivist. If you think that it's possible for whoever the proposition is indexed to, a group, a society, an individual, anything, if you think it's possible for the person or group that the proposition is indexed to not have the goal that's talked about in the proposition, like living in a monogamous society, they don't have any desire for that, but yet the proposition is still true for them. I just have no clue what you mean by that. How could that possibly be the case?
Well, the moral system is different than the actual person's wants or desires.
But look, the proposition is for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society. Say that I don't want to live in a monogamous society. What do you think it means at that point? Here's another way to ask it, okay? What do you even think it means at that point to say, for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society?
I'm not the should is, I mean, I'm referencing the goal, and I don't understand. I guess I can't get away from the goal thing.
Yeah, I think that this is the part. I think you just need to basically,
I mean, that is
like,
wanting to live in a.
you just have two options.
It's subjective.
Okay? Yeah, it is, as far as I can tell, unless you want to give some analysis that makes it objective, right? So there's just two,
Yeah, totally.
there's two pathways here, okay? If I tell you that I don't want to live in that society, okay, you can either say that at that point that proposition is false for me, in which case you're a subjectivist because you think moral propositions are truth apt and you think their truth value depends on the attitude of the subject they're indexed to. That is subjectivism if you think that. Or on the other hand, you could say, no, the proposition is still true even though you don't desire to live in that society. That's going to be objectivism, but at that point, I don't know how the fuck you would possibly mean that, so I'm going to ask for some kind of analysis. So are you sticking to the position that this proposition is true even if I don't want to live in a monogamous society, or are you granting that it would be false if I don't want to live in a monogamous society?
I'm sticking to my guns, man.
Okay, now what the fuck does that mean? What does it mean to say that the proposition would still be true if I don't want to live in this society?
I'm dying to learn. I'm dying to know.
Okay, but if you don't know, then you have to
I'm my therapist,
that...
Isaac. Help me.
hey, whatever. Okay, sorry. But I mean, look, the point is, if you're going to say it's true even if you don't want to live in that society and I can't give any account of why it's true, then sure, you're an objectivist, but you just can't defend your objectivism. You have to be able to give an account if you actually want to defend the objectivism.
I guess, so you're asking me to defend why you should want to live in a monogamous society, because I can do.
I'm very, very precise with the questions, okay? So the question is, why would that proposition still be true for me if I don't desire to live in that society?
Help me out. Give me some hints. Can't this be multiple choice?
Yeah, I mean, you could do a whole ton of things. You could try to say that there's
some, how about like, this?
Well, what?
You might not have the desire to live on a round Earth. You might desire to live on a flat Earth, but that doesn't change the shape of the Earth.
That seems like a bad analogy, right? That's like saying you might not want to live in a society, but the society is still monogamous, right? That's not what I'm disagreeing with. I'm disagreeing with the notion that proposition would still be true if I don't want to live in that society. I don't know what it would mean to say it's still true if I don't want to live in that society. You think it is true, so I just want to know what you even mean by that. And if you can't give any coherent account, I don't know why you would even hold that position.
Well, I've given a coherent account of why I think we should live in a monogamous society.
Oh yeah, no, wait, okay, you have to follow what I'm saying clearly. I didn't say that you didn't explain your view on why we should live in that society clearly. I understand. You have a whole analysis about why it would achieve various goals you have, right? The thing that I need an analysis of, the thing that I'm saying you haven't given an analysis of, is why that proposition would still be true if I don't want to live in that society.
Yeah, you keep saying that, but I don't know that I can give you an answer, because I know that there will be people that will be disadvantaged reproductively. Their individual reproductive advantage will be lost.
Yep.
To the greater good of the societal unit.
I don't know. Good is begging the question again, but yeah.
Greater good in survival and reproductive terms. Like the society will be more stable, more conflict free, more likely to produce.
Yep. If it's just a descriptive
knowledge
claim,
product, like probably a lower suicide rate, probably a higher GDP.
We're not. Well, look, there's things like that I do like. Look, we have disagreements about some of the facts about how the society would be. Okay, but when I say okay to that, all I'm saying is I can grant all of that. I can agree with all of those things, and it wouldn't change the question. So this is what I think you need to realize. Okay, so if someone tells you I believe in God, okay, and you ask why, and they say, well, I can't give you an account, right? Then I think it would be reasonable to say, okay, well, they are a theist, but it doesn't seem like they have any kind of justification for their theism, right? So I'm doing the same thing with you. It seems like you are an objectivist because you're saying that proposition would still be true even if I don't want to live in that society, but you don't seem to have any justification for your objectivism.
Thank you for pointing out and helping me ground a better argument in this, because
No
I mean,
problem.
I don't necessarily know, because it's such a different thing. And I mean, I talk to the theists, and when they're talking about a completely different objective morality than like the Ayn Randian objective morality. Their idea of objective morality is an aspirational morality that's universal. That and I,
Well, you're
like
trying
my
to trying to argue for something universal too. You're saying all humans
not
have the same goals.
not necessarily,
Well,
because
that's humans universally having the same goal. But it doesn't matter. The only reason I mentioned theists is just so that you could see that in another context, if someone did what you're doing, which is saying they believe some proposition is true but are not able to give you any kind of justification for it, you would just say, oh, okay, well, they believe it, but there's no justification for it. Right? That's what I'm doing right now with you and your objectivism. I'm just trying to get you to recognize that you would have a problem with someone else using your exact thought process right now if it were on some topic other than this that you disagreed with.
Can you give me an example of that, just so I can,
Sure.
for clarity's sake?
Sure. Say that someone believes that the sky is red or gold or some shit like that, and they can't give you any explanation of why. It's like, okay, they have the belief, but they can't apparently justify it. Say that I believe that, my speakers are 10 feet tall, right? They're not. They're about a foot tall, right? I have the belief, but I can't give you any justification for it. Just any context where someone thinks some proposition is true and can't justify it.
Justification. So that's why I keep asking.
Sorry, you cut out. What justification?
I'm giving you lots of justifications for why I think we should live in a monogamous society. Is true.
You're changing the claim, Adam. So when you say you're giving justifications for why you think we should live in the society, I don't disagree, okay? You've done a great job, actually. I'm not even saying that sarcastically. You've done a great job of explaining what your reasons are for wanting to live in the society, right? I'm not questioning that you have delivered reasons for wanting to live in that society. What I'm questioning is why you think it's true that the proposition for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society would be true if I don't have a desire to live in that society. That's what I want to understand.
Gotcha.
And if you can't answer that, then you're an objectivist.
That's throwing me off.
Oh, pardon me?
I think the word desire is what's throwing me off, because when I think of objective things, desire doesn't really have anything to do with it.
You know how we were using the word goal? That's fine too. Like goal, desire, all that means it's all the same thing. It's just you have some goal that living in So
yes.
Yeah, goal or desire or whatever. The idea is that there's some subjective wanting for something, right? And so the question is just, with this proposition, what do you mean when you say that it would still be true if I don't have a desire to live in that society? What does that even mean?
Society would conform to certain specifications regardless of your desire to live in it.
I don't disagree with that. How does that answer the question?
And what you're saying is I could reject all of those specifications. And I'm just saying that generally these specifications are desirable because they facilitate survival and reproduction. And you can reject survival and reproduction. I understand
1 second.
that.
When you say generally they're desirable, are you just saying generally people desire them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree that people generally desire those things. How does that answer the question? The question is, why would that proposition be true if I don't desire to live in that society?
Yeah,
we can just pick this up later also, because I think that it's clear. Like, I'm again obviously not being harsh, but just being totally real with you. I don't think you have an answer to that question. I think you're an objectivist who can't justify your objectivism, and I think that you need to be able to generate an answer to that for us to possibly continue this conversation. Because all that's happening is I'm asking it, and you're saying something that's not related to it. I'm asking it, you're saying something that's not related to it over and over and over again, right?
source it to my audience. I'll upload this on my channel. And we'll see if we can get some feedback from them, because they're a lot smarter than me and they've got the philosophical chops. You understand what I'm like? We essentially agree on all the objective points that I'm bringing out. I'm arguing with people.
What we agree on is that there's objective facts about what will maximize well-being, what will cause cohesion.
Totally, yes.
Yeah, no one's
what will maximize survival and reproduction for the group, what will maximize social cohesion, what will all these things what we're tend to be interesting in morality.
What we're disagreeing about, though, right? So we agree there's objective facts about, like, again, those are all just descriptive things. Like punching someone in the face reduces their well-being, right? There's no should in that sentence. It's just a descriptive sentence. We have no disagreement about that, okay? So, and even the areas where we do have disagreements about some descriptive facts, we're not disagreeing that there is some descriptive fact of the matter, okay? The moral thing is where we're having a disagreement, okay? When I put this proposition, for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society, I take that to mean more or less that Isaac has some desire to live in that society, okay? So if I didn't have that desire, then the proposition would be false. Now, if you're saying that the proposition is true, even if I don't have the desire, then you must have some completely different understanding of what it means that for Isaac, we should live in that society. So I'm asking you to give an analysis that explains why that proposition would be true if I don't desire to live in that society.
Right, and the desire is kind of throwing me off of it, because, just because
say I don't have a goal. If you don't like desire, then just say I don't have a goal. There's some technical differences, but who cares? It's close enough to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Why would that be true if I don't have any goal to live in that society? Yeah.
You don't have any goal to live in that society.
Yeah, I just don't care about it. I just don't I just simply don't give a shit about being in a monogamous society. It just doesn't matter to me, okay? Why would that proposition still be true for me? And that's the thing you need to be able to give an analysis of if you want to justify your objection.
Because I don't value, you're saying I don't value any of the things that the society values.
No, I'm just
so
saying.
therefore,
I'm just saying that,
it makes
no, I'm not saying
what the society values subjective.
No, I'm not saying I don't value any of the things, right? Because all I'm saying is overall, it's not the case that I desire to live in that society. But there could be other things that I have that are goals held in common with other people. I'm saying that right there, living in a monogamous society, that's not something that I care about. That's not something I have a desire for. That's not something I have a goal to do. And I'm asking what it would mean to say that that moral proposition is still true for me when I don't have that desire. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that it's clear what it is that you would have to be able to generate an answer to for us to continue.
Okay. Yeah. Can you state that just so if someone in the comments can generate an answer, I can get back to you?
I'll state it once really clearly for the audience, okay? So what Adam and I do not disagree about is that there are objective facts out there in the world that pertain to things like well-being or societal cohesion, okay? Just for an example, there's some fact like being in a war reduces societal cohesion, right? Like I
love you, Isaac.
Right. Totally well, so I think that's true, right? And we might disagree about certain facts about what will maximize cohesion or whatever, but we certainly agree that there are facts about that, right? The thing that Adam and I are disagreeing about is whether the proposition for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society, remains true even if I don't have a desire to live in that society. If he would agree that that proposition would become false if I don't have a desire to live in that society, then he's a subjectivist. He does not agree with that. He says that the proposition for Isaac, we should live in a monogamous society, would remain true even if I don't desire to live in that society. That means there's some kind of objectivism going on, but I simply have no clue what he means when he says that that proposition would remain true. So we need some kind of analysis of that proposition that accounts for why it would be true even if I don't have a desire to live in the society.
I had a guy that emailed me, and it's killing me that I can't remember his name. I've been trying to remember his name this whole conversation, but we were talking about objective morality. And potentially laying out the premise conclusion thing like you are a fan of doing. So maybe this will help. So what we need in the comments below is a good argument for Adam.
Right. Yeah.
I am just becoming the avatar for my audience these days.
Well, hey, if you're trying to create a syllogism, right, then what you want the conclusion to
Yeah.
be is, therefore, even if Isaac doesn't have a desire to live in a monogamous society, the proposition for Isaac we should live in a monogamous society is still true. That should be the conclusion of your syllogism
Okay.
if you're going to try to give a formal argument.
We got one of them. We got the conclusion, and as usual, as human beings, we're going to work backward from that conclusion.
Fair enough, dude. Is there anything else
and
that
try
you
to figure
want that you want to hit on while we're here?
This was great, man. This
Yeah,
is
it was
totally
good.
good.
It was good. Thanks for letting me berate you about objective morality.
Yeah, no doubt. Now I'm gonna let my audience berate me about it. So I guess I'll let you go. Is that cool?
Yeah, it's good talking to you, man. Have a good one, eh?
Yeah. Take care, man.
Peace out, dude.